Hi, everybody. Achilles Justice here with the Philosophy Society. Today is July 17th, 2024. It's a Wednesday. We're in the Toronto Metropolitan University Library. So we're going to go through a movie today, Being There, 1979. Yeah, so we're going to watch the film. I can't put that on YouTube because of copyright infringement. And then we're going to do a discussion after. So this is going to like the little intro before the movie, quick talk, and then I'll do another video, which it'll be instant for you guys watching on YouTube after. So for our new friend, Leticia Haig, welcome. So basically, the Philosophy Society is a means. There's one video, I don't know if I sent it to you. The Philosophy Society is a WISE group. I explained what it is there. So it was like maybe 2 months ago. So if you wanted to watch that one, I almost explain this every single time I'm here. But basically, philosophy is the love of wisdom, right? And so to say that there is a group of people that are wise, it's not necessarily just reading the history of philosophy or other philosophers. It's to be wise is to have an accurate assessment or a sound judgment of things, knowledge, the way things make sense. That's part of wisdom. And also like living a good life would be wise. So it would be the absence of mental illness. If someone's like depressed, you wouldn't say that being depressed is a wise thing to do, right? And it's also like how we make sense of things and how we make judgments and decisions and our actions and the soundness of our experience. All of those things are incorporated into wisdom. And so the Philosophy Society, really, if it's an entity, it would be a wise group of people that don't make mistakes with how groups are structured in themselves. So groups have a bunch of biases, like conformity is like a social pressure that humans have. And sometimes conformity can be a bad thing, right? Or like the bystander effect. And so social psychology has taught us about a whole bunch of these biases that occur. And part of the wisdom of being a group of people would be not to make those mistakes, right? And also in ourselves, how we can be critical thinkers and look at the scientific information and integrate that into our own lives and as a community. And so part of it is, as a social group, there are certain norms or practices that are part of being a group. And we want to make those like the ideal standard, right? Because that way, what happens is there's like almost an automatic reinforcement of just being in the group that it will make you a better person. That's kind of the goal, right? And together we can be better people as a group as well. And so there's certain things like in-group, out-group bias, which is basically like the seed of like racism and prejudice and religious conflict, right? So if we can find a way to have superordinate goals and a superordinate identity, then we don't have to affiliate with specific superficial identity factors like ethnicity or religious denomination, and we can see each other as just part of humanity and a future-oriented goal of like living in harmony together and not going extinct, for example, right? And so those are kind of like some basic ideas of what the Philosophy Society is, and having that as a social entity, right? Then we're prepared to read philosophy and make sense of it. But a lot of the times what can happen is just getting into like unhealthy disagreement. And then like some people have come to me from other philosophy groups and all they just do is argue and fight. And so that seems unwise to me. And even in someone who has 2 degrees in philosophy, a lot of you see that in undergraduate is they just learn to be disagreeable and they're not really learning wisdom in itself, right? And so, yeah, so that's what it's about, right? And so we can bring in, so if you've studied philosophy academically, then you can bring that stuff in and connect it together into the group, which is super useful. But predominantly, I'm focusing on practicing and teaching those elements that can make us a more cohesive group to integrate within the rest of the world, right? Whereas like religious communities, again, they become a lot of the times very like isolated and they only will associate with those of like-mindedness, right? And so some of the standards in this group is to be reasonable, to look at evidence, and then how to evaluate those things using the philosophy of science and then critical thinking at the same time, right? So that's basically what it is. Okay, so Daji, I'm going to end the thing now. We're going to start the film here, so you can watch it too. You can pay for it on YouTube. Maybe you can find a streaming site.
I'm pirating it.
Okay, we're not going to say that you did that, but watch it. That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Free there.
There might be something called fmovies.com that we don't know about.
Thank you for the not recommendation.
I'm not going to really recommend F movies because it would be unethical to do that. That's like a Trump statement right there.
All right, guys, enjoy the movie.
Okay, so we'll see everybody back in a couple hours, and then we'll discuss it. So if you have to make notes, and then I look forward to talking.
Okay.
Awesome. Hey, everybody, it's Kelly Justice here. So we just finished watching the movie, Being There. What did everybody think?
It reminded me of Modern Times, Charles Chaplin.
Okay.
In the beginning, at least, when he was so focused on doing that in his world, and then when he came to reality, he didn't know what to do anymore. Kind of like when we are stuck in a pattern, and then when we're out, we kind of like calm. But because we live in a society, we adapt fast, and he did not. He didn't.
Okay. Very cool. Any other ideas? You have many ideas.
I think it's a really good movie because usually after my memory is I have a limitation with my memory.
Okay.
After 1 week, but I want to retain something every time I read a book on memory and I write. So I think I had three parts. First one, Les Miserables. How life is really a picture of society, real society. How the weak people against the rich people and the social pyramid. Secondly, there is always angels in this life. By chance, it has and we have a parody. The parody of how someone in the low level of this pyramid could be equal to the highest level of the president, even higher. It's some don't think you are stupid because of your clothes, because of your car, or something. This is something special inside everyone. And the third one, I took the picture when someone is dying, even you are rich, you have nothing for the next life or whatever. This was in 3-4 seconds, the image with the corpse and behind the big castle, the house. This house after this life is not for you. So it was great, many things to think.
Very good. Any ideas on either of these points at all?
On that point, that he said that even though he was just a gardener, he was even like compared to be better than the president, like the next president itself. Like talking about clothes and things, I feel like yes, it is what's inside. Although for him, I think he was such an empty canvas that he was kind of like a mirror, and he
Very good.
many moments, people were just saying things to him, and he was like there and silent, and then they were like, "You're brilliant," and they come up with something completely different, and then I felt that way, but also because like I don't think he would have been considered that smart, although he didn't even say anything, if he wasn't wearing those clothes. Because like at one point, someone said, "Oh, handmade linen, like his suits and his underwear is like the finest cotton." Like I feel like if it was a nobody, like looking like a nobody that she hit, they wouldn't have cared about a lawsuit or anything.
Yeah. Very good. Any other ideas? I have a bunch of stuff to say, but I want everyone else to speak first, and then I'll talk at the end.
Why the movie called Being There?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because they were like this couple was miserable, right? Like she was gonna lose her husband, so she needed someone to be there for her. If she's a widow, right? So he was there. So he helped her, accept his death. But they were so happy to see him because they're going through tragedy because he's sick. So his presence alleviated the pain.
Okay.
Even though, only his presence, he was just there. That's it. And he allowed everyone to project to him. They projected and he projected back. He said what everybody wanted to hear.
Yep.
And he repeated back what people were telling him. He would repeat it back. So he would make everybody feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody felt they were heard because he would repeat back.
Very good. Okay. What'd you think, Natalia?
Yeah, I also noticed that he wasn't talking much, and all people, just the assumption of whatever they think it is.
It's true.
I have three. I took three phrases. Small one is everyone has a little boy inside. It's really, if you think you are a child, just as a child, and you think as a child, you see the world with different eyes. The second one is when you are in the hospital, is take. He was a little somehow regretting what else he could do in his life. So at the end of the life, his life is a taste of the mind. His life is a taste. So
It's a mindset.
right, right, and too much left to do. People is dying. When something nurses and doctor said, people regret. They say, "Why I didn't do it? Why?" It's many things to do, but for any reason, I didn't.
And his wife is young, so his wife has a lot to do. That's
So
what he needs.
take
There's
care
so
of
much, yeah.
take care of it.
Shika, what'd you think? Okay. That's good.
I think the president was going through a hard time, and
Mhm.
so was the woman and her husband. They were all going through a hard time. And the gardener, you know, his quotes were inspiring to everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
It made sense in politics. It made sense for her, the widow.
Mhm.
Everyone felt alleviation from his presence.
This is great. How do you see the garden at the same level as a president?
Yeah.
So and even more. Say, hey, you have created it's fresh. My family in Spain, also my grandparents, also farmers, and I grew up with this kind of ambience, and I saw how great is nature when you from the beginning you collect fruits, oranges. I like to go to the one I see one orange artificial, and I remember the natural orange. It's nothing to do. This is farmers. Sometimes this is we have much to learn.
Okay, so I'll just go through some of the ideas that I got down there. So throughout the film, right, like Chauncey is kind of like somebody that like basically like has autism or something like that, right? And so what the television actually like carries the narrative through the TV show he's watching, and the scenes on the television is like in some ways filling in the gaps for what Chauncey is thinking or what's going on in the scene. So for example, like when the old man dies and Chauncey has to move out, there's dialogue on the television Chauncey's watching that relates to that. When he arrives at the new state, there's like the Basketball Jones thing where the character gets really big, and that's Chauncey's step towards becoming something much greater than he is. His attraction for Eve, there's elements in that. And then throughout the film, there's this double narrative or double meaning thing through the use of projection. So Chauncey will be talking at the level of the gardener, and then everybody will project their own interpretations throughout the entire film, right? Like Chauncey doesn't really change at all, but every single person sees him differently, right? The doctor sees him as funny, whereas she sees him as very intense, right?
And the gangsters sees him as causing trouble.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
It's not causing trouble. He's asking for food or something to the gangsters.
Yeah.
Now, it's, you know, he thought all the real life is inside the TV, the television.
Yes.
It's like I thought in the Plato myth.
Okay.
The cave, because you have all this real is inside, outside is totally lost. He was missing.
Because he had no life experience. He was trapped in the house all his life. So that TV helped him navigate the society.
Is a TV symbol of something?
So
Is
Yeah.
Is a metaphor of something?
Well, it kind of carries the narrative throughout the entire film, right? Like Chauncey has the character of like the savant, and
another thing, I feel like he cheers her up by watching those cartoons.
Yeah.
right? She's feeling so sad because her husband is dying, and he's putting cartoons, he's watching TV, he's feeling that he's showing to her that everything is gonna be okay. He's showing his strength that to cheer her up, and she likes that strength that he shows.
Right. Again, he has a boy inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to ask why he didn't have empathy when his master died.
That's a good point.
Well, part of it is that Chauncey,
Because he was ignored.
okay,
He was never paid, right? There's no records of him getting paid. That's what the
Okay.
lawyers were saying.
sure.
He had no ID. He was just living for free in the house. So he didn't have emotional attachment with the owner. They were just feeding him food.
Yeah, but him living there for free and stuff like that the reason he doesn't have emotional attachment in the same way is because of his psychological state. It's not because of what is going on with him in the environment. He was treated really well there.
But also, even though, like, he was, I feel like I agree with, forgot
Kathy.
her name, Kathy. Okay, with what Kathy's saying, because I think if he had any time to like talk to Chance and be like, hey, this is my name, like he never once referred to the old man for his name. He always just used old man. Whereas when Ben died, he cried.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not emotional.
He only knew Ben for like a couple weeks, and he felt something. He cried, and I don't think like the movie like he acts that way because he has autism or something like that.
Yeah,
I think it's because what
Jose.
Jose was saying. Yes, sorry. What Jose was saying about like the cave, like he never talked to anyone outside, so what he knew was the TV. And then when he went to the world, he was like, "Oh, this is not real. This is crazy." Like when he was with Eve, which he loved, he preferred to watch the TV than to be there with her because the TV was his world.
familiar.
Yeah, it was what he was familiar with, and I feel like it's like the way he behaved wasn't exactly like no one came to him and sat with him and said like, "This is life," you know,
Mhm.
like he never had that. He just grew up with the TV, and then he became who he is, and no one like ever took a minute and explained to him like, "I am me because someone sat with me and put me through school and taught me things. You're you because someone like everyone."
Yeah, that
like,
made erased him.
Exactly. And if, like, let's say if Kathy was just born and threw it in the wild, like, she would become like an animal, like living in the wild. And
Yeah.
then when she came out here, we would be like, why are you acting that way, you weirdo? Like, do you have a problem or something? But no, it's like what she was raised to be. Like, same with him.
So I don't know if he was born that way or he just turned out that way
I
because
think
they
he
never,
adapts to the, like,
Mhm.
to the environment he was living in.
and he never
Yeah.
learned how to read or write.
Yes,
That's
like
what the
no
man
one,
said.
no one cared for him. Like, yes,
No
he
one
had
taught
food and he had a place to live, but so did the slaves. Like, he still had to be paid. He was working. Like, he wasn't in, but he didn't have ID. He didn't have anything. Like, they didn't care for him as a human.
They didn't send him to school. They didn't send him to the doctor.
Like, who were his parents? Yeah.
Yeah,
He was
that's
an
an example
orphan.
of like a feral child that's like not socialized properly, and then
Orphan, right?
they don't develop their processing of language because they don't have exposure to others. But he did have some exposure to TV, right?
Well, TV was invented after, right? Now when he was born.
Yeah, he used to listen to the radio only, and that was
Mhm.
like, I assume when he was like maybe a teenager.
And he was a type. He hasn't social filters. What I think, I expected. I have no, even with a president.
It's kind of like the kids in the US when people are complaining that now the kids are speaking with the Australian accent, watching Bluey.
Okay.
Yeah, because like, and no one taught them that. It's just what they see on the TV. So the kids start speaking with the Australian accent because they're watching
It's a
Bluey
part
so
of it.
much. Yeah.
All right, so let's continue with some of these notes here. So there's the double narrative. So for example, when Ben's like, Chauncey says, my house was shut down. Ben interprets that as like, oh, your business was shut down.
Mhm.
And then he's like, what are your plans now? He like wants to work in the garden. And he's like, oh, he interprets that in the business context again. Yeah, and then he talks about the room upstairs, and then Ben thinks he means like heaven or death. Chauncey actually meant the physical room
Yeah.
upstairs, which is funny. You mentioned Chauncey's appearance. And so we see that at the very beginning, like he is legitimized because he's dressed well. So he tells the cop about the tree that needs care. And if anybody else said that was dressed differently, they wouldn't have taken him seriously,
Mhm.
right? a big thing that comes throughout the film is the phrase "I understand," and what does the word "understand" mean, or the psychological state of understanding? Because when
People
Chauncey
understood.
says "I understand," I don't think he actually does understand, right? Because he doesn't summarize the person saying. He may understand it at a different level, but again, what does it understanding truly
He
mean
makes
in its
people
essence?
feel understood. That's the main thing.
Sure.
People feel seen, people feel alleviated, they feel understood by him.
Mhm. And that goes to the title of the film being there, right?
Maybe that he learned that phrase maybe from the
The
TV.
power of presence.
In some ways, I think sure, but I think it's a social convention that he's using the term "I understand," because multiple times in the film, someone's saying something and he'll respond by saying "understand," but it's not clear that he actually does understand. Like when the driver hits him with the car, and then he's like, "I assure you, David is a very safe driver," even though David just crashed into him. And then Chauncey says, "I understand." Well, that's completely contradictory, like, because the guy just hit you with the car, right? And then when Eve meets the old man, he says that he's reasonable. And then there's the other interpretations. Eve says he's intense. The doctor finds him that he has a sense of humor. Part of Chauncey's like demeanor or his presence in situations is just telling the truth. I think you brought this up. And Chauncey meets the old man, and he's like, "Oh, well, they're pumping oxygen in the room." And then Chauncey just blatantly says, "You must be very ill." Or at the end of the film, he's like, "Are you going to die now?" Right? And most people just wouldn't say that stuff, right? Chauncey, so people, again, reading into the dialogue, Ben's financial assistance fund. He's like, "Do you have any ideas?" He's like, "No." And so Chauncey was being honest. He's like, "I don't know what the hell you're talking about." Right? And then Ben's like, "Oh, you're reluctant to tell me." Right? So it's projection again. And then when he meets the president, he says, "You look much smaller on TV." So he just completely doesn't see social rank or hierarchy at all. Like there's no registering that you're supposed to treat the president in a specific way.
We call him Bobby.
Yeah. In the library meeting, he talks about stimulating growth with temporary incentives. That's what Bobby, the president, is communicating. Chauncey says, "As long as the roots are not severed, all is well and all will be well in the garden." In the garden, growth has its seasons: spring, summer, then fall, winter, then spring, summer. And again, Chauncey is maybe interpreting things in the way that he understands it, right? And that's part of the whole film, the garden philosophy. And it's really intuitive in some ways. And it's interesting because it can be applied to so many
Yeah, I
different
really like the
contexts.
president's speech, actually.
Mm.
Yeah, that's really legit.
Chauncey Gardner for president.
Well, that's, yeah, at the end, right? And then Ben says, "Welcome the seasons of nature, but we're upset about the seasons of the economy." And Chauncey says, "Well, there'll be growth in the spring." Daji, you want to see something online here?
Yeah. I just wanted to ask around the end because in the entire movie was a question for me because as you said, the only thing Chansey does is just dress exceptionally well, even for the neighborhood he's in.
Yeah.
And everybody, no matter what he says, they always have an expectation of what a person like that would say. He never meets that, so like they kind of project, okay, what does he mean, right? What would I say if I was in the position, type of thing? Is it a metaphor for authority? Because in the end, like Chansey literally walks on water like Jesus.
Yeah,
He's
and
like-
that's another thing at the end, right? So we can talk about that too. Well, I think it's just like there's something called the halo effect, which is a cognitive bias where if somebody looks attractive or they look professional, just that in itself presents that they're either likable or they have a position of authority.
Is it a metaphor for like how careless we are with how we give people authority and how authority kind of just
Yeah,
Because
well,
because he's it's implied that he's gonna get a position in government just because he dressed well and didn't communicate with people properly.
it's not only that he dressed well, like it's what Kathy is saying too, that it's the way he made people feel. Like everybody that he comes into contact with, except for the president. That was the person that it was an off-putting circumstance to him, you know, because like he's like, "Do you agree with what the president said?" And he's like, "With what the president said?" Like he kind of questions him a little bit and doesn't just give him blind authority. but most other people have a very positive interaction with Chauncey. So it's not just that he dresses well, it's also like the way that he's making people feel too, right?
But you know, I kind of feel like, you know, because this movie, I don't think it's about Chauncey.
Sure.
It's about the society. You know, that's why they bring the whole, you know, the high class, from the president to the FBI to the CIA. You know, it's a quite irony.
Mhm.
That you know, basically, you know, Chauncey didn't see anything wise. He's seeing he's just seeing something very, very general. You know, like autumn, like spring. Anyone can say that. So if something apply to everything, then maybe this is the most dumb thing.
Mhm.
Because you know, like a lot of people just you know, hurry up to make up their own, because there's a norm, because Chauncey represents power, because they think that he is the president's favorite, or some VIP. If he's just like a normal person and he speaks like that, you know, those people will it's not about they feel, let them feel well, like the
Mhm.
ambassador, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not like that. It's a whole irony about the whole society. You know how, you know, because it's so easy. Actually, if people can dig a little bit deeper, you know, they will find out. Like the doctor will find out
Yeah.
who he is.
He found out
Yeah,
eventually.
I think that's the one of the major theme about this movie. It's about, you know, why this intelligent, so-called intelligent, or you know, all the education or the power. It's just because they think Chauncey is a very powerful person.
Because he was friends with the man Ben, which is best friends with.
Right, and then the rumor and they said, oh, he knows 8 languages.
Yeah, and
And
exactly.
he has,
yeah.
whatever. That's a totally, you know,
It's funny
It's like-
how the Russians made him Russian
Yeah.
just because
Yeah.
he feels good, you know, like if they related.
yeah. It reminded me of some so-called guru, you know.
Yeah.
Some so-called guru can always say something. The sun comes up from the every day the sun comes up, so you know you can interpret it any way you can, right?
Very
But it
good.
means that people needed to hear him. They needed his presence because they were going through bad health. The man was dying, so he needed a friend. The wife was a widow. She needed support. The president had trouble with the economy. He needed inspiration from his speech. So he filled all the needs of all these people.
But what if
That
he
they were
doesn't-
vulnerable. They were all in a vulnerable
No, it's
state.
not about what he did. It's just about him being there.
See, we're getting there. Yeah, very good.
But what if he doesn't have the power? What if it's just like that? You know, when he first showed up, you know, he even got bullied by the, you know, he said the same thing. But why different people have different reactions? It's a norm. There's a norm. Oh, you're supposed to speak smart things, you know,
Yeah.
because they're in front of a VVIP, you know.
I feel like it's more about how open you are to be open to someone. Like if you go to therapy, for example.
So she showed all different prototypes of the people in society. It's excellent. We can find the attorney. Okay, give me your card. Tomorrow you are supposed to leave. That we see the people who try to kill him. Hey, we see the people, the angels. We see the president. We see the doctors. So you know, everyone has a different prototype of this society. So exactly, it's a picture of American society.
Okay.
Well, excellent.
Sure.
I think it's still because of power. You know, people try to please him, like especially the women. They try to guess what he likes. You know,
Yes,
oh,
mystery.
you know,
It's mysterious.
maybe, what do you like? You know, I don't know what you like. You know, it's so miserable
Okay.
because I can imagine those people's life. You know, they couldn't be themselves. They couldn't be themselves. So, you know, so there's a lot of twisting there.
Well, it's this. You're initially you're mentioning the social credibility, like when you're associated with somebody, that reference gives you credibility in some ways. Like he knows Ben. Ben is in this like elite class with the president, and there are other people, they're associates. Ben said, so the president, Bobby says, listen to your friend Chauncey. This is a time of life. Ben says, yes, this is a time of life. And then he's thinking about Chauncey and Eve at that moment, right? Ben says, you don't play games with words. You protect yourself. You're direct. And he's like, I want you to take charge of this financial institution, which is kind of crazy in some ways, right? Louise, the maid that made him breakfast and stuff, she makes a comment on systemic racism. She's like, all you have to be is white to get anywhere in this country, right? Because she's like, he's not smarter, he's as dumb as a jackass, she says. He can't read or write, these kinds of things, right? Throughout the film, there's at least 2 points of how Chauncey's presence was demasculating. The lawyer, his girlfriend, wanted to like have sex, and then the president, on 2 different occasions, the president's wife wanted to have sex, and both the lawyer and the president were so upset about Chauncey that they couldn't perform sexually or whatever. So that was a thing. There's Krolov's Fables. I never got a chance to I don't really know what these are about, but I saved a thing on that, so we can look into that later. The Russian ambassador brings that up, so that's something to explore. And to kind of like sum up, so at the end, on Rand's tomb, and the last statement of Bobby's eulogy is life is a state of mind. So Ben's state of mind before he died was there's so much to do, right? Whereas Chauncey, I don't know, what is Chauncey's state of mind? Let's have like an open.
Just put a cartoon on, just do yoga, just, right? Not worry. He doesn't worry too much.
It's true.
Like he was hungry walking in the street and he's just going with it. Like he's not worried. And the old man is very worried about the shares.
Yeah.
I think if I had to define like his mission in life would be like watching the little things grow. Like
The young plants.
not even just young plants, but relationships with others and just everything. Like,
Yeah.
like how he was there to help Eve through her grief. Well, she was grieving already before her husband died. Like everything to help and just like watch things grow and just like, being there with a silly face and just
It's cute.
Even it was a drama. It was a sad, the whole like poor man.
Yeah.
But sometimes it was a funny.
yeah.
It's a comedy, technically, right?
I saw it as a drama.
Okay, sure.
But sometimes, yes, it's incredible. But
Like you feel bad for laughing.
it's
Sometimes, right? Okay, so then Chauncey for president at the end, the associates are kind of discussing this, and it kind of shows the notion of like, I don't know if you want to use political corruption or at least just the influence of individuals have within politics is a thing.
What I like is that the doctor found out that it was a real gardener, and he said, "Don't tell them yet." Right?
Oh, yeah.
Because he was bringing so much alleviation, not joy, but he was a good company in the house. That the doctor said, "Don't tell them yet." Right? They're going through death. They're going through a loss.
Yeah.
Don't disclose him or don't
And he didn't
show
tell.
his real.
And Ben's like, he comes to tell Ben what he found out about Chauncey. And he's like, Chauncey has made the thought of dying bearable or easier. And then the doctor's like, I can't tell him. I can't ruin the man's last moment with the truth. Right? Like he didn't tell him the truth.
And the doctor told the attorney to stay quiet.
Yeah.
And the attorney did. He's like, okay, yes, he's actually is.
But
A real
attorney,
gardener.
He didn't think, the attorney thought that the whole thing was just like a play. He was like, of course he didn't believe he was an actual gardener.
Yeah, he believed it, right? He didn't actually see the truth.
He's stupid. Like the guy believed it because he knew he was living with him. So he was like, no way, this guy's like.
No, because if people knew this was a real gardener, they didn't respect.
Yeah.
It's because of your bank account, your car, your company. A gardener? This is our society. It's
Yeah,
what
even
we
then
think.
when he was saying like he's Chance, the gardener, but he was dressed well, he was drinking wine.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, Chancey Gardner? I was like, yeah.
So then at the end of the film, Chauncey walks on water. And as Dodgy pointed out, this like is alluding to the story of Jesus that walked on water. So there's this like, I don't know, parallel there that they threw in. And they didn't have to do that. Like the director or the screenwriter, whoever, they decided to put that reference at the very end of the film.
Yeah, what's that? What's that like? Is it what is that documentary recording how they make the movie at the end? Like,
Oh, that was just at the very end. That was just like a bloopers thing. It was just funny.
it's just fun,
It's
right?
fun.
So Dodgy, you want to make some point about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up. I mean, the whole thing, like, truth didn't matter the entire show. It's just what, as you said, is what made few people better. So it just reminded me one of the greatest people on earth, one of the greatest minds on earth. I think Zizek, Slavoj Zizek, if you agree.
Okay.
He pointed out that wisdom is meaningless. So he said, like, we might assume that, wise sayings and stuff like that, but that's meaningless, because he pointed out an example where he said, presence makes the heart grow fonder, or something like that. And he said that could be framed as a wise saying, right? Your presence makes my heart grow fonder, or something like that. But the opposite is true when you say out of sight, out of mind, right? So truth doesn't really matter. It's like perception. It's about who's saying it and how.
Yeah, well, from a relativistic perspective, it would be true to the individual. It would be like a subjective truth at the least, right?
People like to believe what they need to believe.
Hmm.
So the president needed inspiration. She needed like to like a guy, so he was there. He was the empty canvas.
See,
to
that's-
become what everybody wants.
This is the point this is like basically the last point, right? And it's the title of the film. So what does the title of the film mean, being there? And why is that? And why is it philosophical? Because this movie is actually really like the most philosophical film ever. If you look like IMDb and like other like lists, at least I checked when I checked it many years ago, but I had like a long film campaign where I found a bunch of philosophy movies. And part of it is that projection element, that just his presence in itself was all that really was necessary.
It's because he was with people that had the need for that. They
Yes.
were vulnerable. They
Mhm.
needed him.
Pure.
Mhm.
If he's with people that don't need him, then it wouldn't work.
Like the little gang at the beginning of the movie. They threatened to kill him and shit.
So why does this so-called intelligent people need him? Yes, I agree with you.
Because she's losing her husband, so she needs a friend. Right? She's a rich woman in the 1979. There's no internet. So you need a friend. You need support. Your husband is dying. Right?
Yeah.
Now you don't need it. Now you can entertain yourself. But
Yeah.
in that time, you needed another person to support you through the loss of your
But
husband.
why him? No? Because
Because they felt trust in him, because he doesn't play with words. He's not manipulative. It's very he's a man of few words, so he sounds like a philosophical.
so
man.
that means, I agree with you. That means maybe before she met him, her life is very empty. Even though she's in a very high class, she go to all the banquets. Just
Because
like
she's younger than her husband.
what Tolstoy talk about. It's empty. Upper class circle is so fake.
Yeah.
Otherwise she already had so many friends. I mean, her life is so miserable that she had to, even she met him, it is still like a guessing. Sometimes, do you want me to open up? And if he says, he actually doesn't know what it means, but
Yeah.
and then he suddenly changes. He's like, oh, maybe I should act like a. She's back and forth.
Mhm.
So it's not real.
He was making out with her because
not
he's
authentic.
mimicking the TV,
Yeah.
and then he stops. And then-
She's still hiding her feeling. It's a very twisted life.
And then they needed an escort because her husband is so sick.
Yeah.
And he said that he would go. So they trusted him. Right?
Yes.
They didn't feel him as a threat.
The first
That's
thing
why.
you say to the president, hey, on TV, you look like a smaller.
It's a nice
It's,
joke.
it's
Yeah.
not a
Sounds like
compliment. It's a fresh idea. The roots are very important. All it was out of the box. No hypocritical. No say, hey, you are beautiful. You are the best. You are my president. No, he was very real
Mhm.
because he lived on TV, inside the TV. And the real world was totally different.
So people thought he was sound like a philosopher, right? He sounded like a philosopher,
Yeah, he's like
Sure.
even though he was just a
he's like a
garbage.
guru.
But his gardening philosophy was applicable to a lot of the context if you could find a way to make sense of it,
Yeah.
right? And everyone kind of did that. And so the being there-ness is really just, there's a certain presence that you can have in people's lives. And it doesn't really matter what you say, but it's how you're being with them. And there's the notion of Dasein from Heidegger, and Dasein is translated into being there. It's in the experience, the nowness of consciousness in the present moment that words don't really describe.
And the
But
dying man said
Heidegger's
that.
being there is you have to be conscious, and it's a death, unaware of the death. But you know, Chauncey, he's
You don't have to be conscious. Like
not conscious
your
at
dog,
all.
yeah, but like if you're going through a hard time and your dog's just there when he's stale and he just wants you for food, like
He's there.
yeah, but
and
he's there
it matters.
and it's everything I need, even though he just wants me for food.
Yeah, Heidegger would say there's a difference between all other animals and humans in their form of consciousness because of what.
I'm just talking
David
about
said.
the Heidegger's concept, you know, being there.
Yeah.
Because in his concept is that you have to be aware that death can come in any minute to you, and then you live the fullest of your life. That's what Heidegger means. At least
Yeah, no, that's cool. And well, it's the possibility of death in some ways, you know. And I don't think we're always mindful of that, though.
Right, yeah.
Right? I think it's a capacity of us, but Dasein translated as being there is like a non-analytic
Right.
sense of presentness
Yeah.
in your experience.
I don't see that in trances, you know. Trances, you know, just watch TV.
The beauty
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that they trusted him. They didn't feel mistrust, right? The dying man said that I trust this man for some reason. They feel he makes people like not. He doesn't look suspicious, right? He's not trying to harm anyone. People sense that they can trust him, even though he's.
I totally agree. So that also reflects why in their own life, why they cannot trust, you know, each other. So that, you know, oh, they see Chauncey. You know, if they already can trust each other, you know, in their normal life, you know, the lady, whatever, then, you know, it won't be, you know, so that reflects how lack of trust in their life.
You know why they trust him?
In society in general.
Yeah.
Because he hurt his leg, and they said, "Do you want to claim?" And he said he doesn't want to claim.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
really liked it. They really appreciated
Yeah.
that.
Normally people will talk
Twice.
to lawyer, you know,
He
claim.
declined 2 claims.
Yeah.
Right. The
I don't want
attorney-
a claim. You didn't understand what
The
it meant.
attorney remembered that he didn't want to claim.
Yeah.
So that's why the attorney kept quiet. They forgave him.
That's good. Very
The,
good point.
the attorney, the doctor, everyone forgave him because he's not asking for a claim. He's not taking advantage of others.
Okay, so last point. So why was his name Chance?
Because
the-
he was not named. He was an orphan. He didn't have a name.
Chance, like chances, the different, chance of things happening or not happening. Everything's like by chance, like, you know what I mean?
It was very unlikely the series of events that occurred for that person.
Yeah, like, what are the odds? And then things can happen, like, he just, I don't know how to explain it.
That's good. Very good.
But who named him Chance? Louise or
I don't
some?
think it matters.
It's more about the one person that wrote the story, right? Like, why was that the name?
Well,
they
Louise
chose?
raised him, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know, but like she
And
kept
in
it
reality,
Robert, but the writer picked Chance for a reason. Like,
Anybody else any ideas on the term chance?
The only thing is the pyramid. He was impressed because usually in North America, they have the rich people, a pantheon, but it's normal, beautiful, expensive.
See, that's a
like
good point.
house.
Yeah.
It was a pyramid. It's not Egyptians with the eyes. This
The
eye,
tomb.
very
The tomb?
Illuminati.
the tomb, yes,
Yeah.
the tomb with the eye and the pyramid. This is something. This is
Symbolic.
remember Egyptians.
The thing,
Egyptians,
mhm.
we are nothing in the next life.
The thing that was interesting though is that there was no Christian symbology
No
at the
Christian.
death, but the Christian symbology was Chauncey walking on the water.
Uh-huh.
Right? It was super subtle and indirect. Maybe
Uh-huh.
there's other demigods that have also done that. Like Jesus as a character has there's a study that was done like a looking at all of the similarities between Jesus and other characters, like being born of a virgin, resurrecting within 3 days, and there's a whole bunch of different individuals that have very similar attributes of their story.
Mhm.
Anyways, the point is that it was interesting that there was that walking on water thing that is very close to Jesus as an analogy, but there was no explicit Christian symbology. Like there was no cross. There was not one cross in the movie, right? So that pulls it back a bit from being pushed directly towards Christianity, because they could have done that. They could have just like held it up and been like, boom, there you go. Jesus in your face. Or had it in a t-shirt, like Jesus with the thumbs up,
I I think it's one of those things made, so it's like, right now we're talking about how Chance made everyone reflect themselves. Like, I feel like this movie, like, no religion can say, oh, we can't relate to this because this is not our God. You know, like,
That's good.
everybody
Very
can
good,
see
yeah.
themselves in that thing because it doesn't exclude
Yeah.
religions, which I think back then was like the main.
For example, Trump said, God is the boss. It's many times. He said, God is for Americans, God is the boss. But in this case, rich people, God, we are blessed because of God. God, in this case, nothing.
Well, Chauncey was the god. That's what it comes down to with the walking on water miracle, right? So
Yeah, he made the president have a speech. He made it easier for the funeral. So he did a great deed, and his job was over. I think that's what it means, like walks on water. His job is over because he was going to be exposed after, right?
we'll have to see Being There Part 2. I don't know if
No, he was going to be exposed.
it's okay. So that's
That was
cool.
awesome.
Thank you for coming today. We'll watch another movie soon, and I have a long list. And this one was a good one. It's one of the best movies in the bucket. I have a bucket of movies, and I pulled them out. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you guys later.